Welcome to India Podcasts.
Two things haven't been thought out: the lockdown and the exit strategy. You don't know it all. You cannot be arrogant because this is something like this which we've never seen before. Let me ask you, how many chief ministers were consulted before the lockdown was announced? It is more like a loan package. We have to be responsible. We can't be going into crowds. I think obviously the focus on healthcare infrastructure, I think the biggest one will be on education. Telemedicine will change. How we do our charity will change. And I think the way we worship is also going to change. The way we transport, the way we move around will change. Who knows? This is one of the best interviews I've done in a long, long time.
Thank you so much, Derek sir, for joining us on India Podcast. For viewers and listeners, it's a privilege to have you with us today, and most important to have your voice with us because a lot is going around in the country. In fact, globally, we're quite fighting this whole pandemic. First, rarest of rare, whether we compare it to the Spanish flu or anything, but it is an experience firsthand for everybody. We have seen the numbers now surging. There are assumptions going around whether the second round would come around. I want you to tell us first in the beginning, how do we look at COVID-19 going forward from here? Is there an understanding by now in any way?
I think everyone's still feeling their way around. And in fact, the state which I come from, perhaps the only place in the world where COVID just may be the number 2 challenge, because the number 1 challenge is the aftermath of the massive cyclone which caused so much of destruction. So it's a double challenge for handling COVID as well as for handling the cyclone. As far as COVID goes, I'm not going to do any politics on your show, but I have to mention that first lockdown was called with 4 hours notice. And I think that was a bit of a problem. The second problem was that when we went into lockdown, 550 cases. When we're getting out of lockdown, 2 lakh, 3 lakh cases. Let me talk specifically about state governments and central governments. I think one of the things which all state governments have to acknowledge, and I'm very happy that I come from a state, West Bengal, where the state government has acknowledged this. The first acknowledgement is that you don't know it all. You cannot be arrogant because this is something like this which we've never seen before. For example, now, our discharge rate is very, very good. The number of testing we have now is about 42. We initially had only 2 testing labs. Now we've got 42. Discharge rate is good. Testing numbers in the beginning was not so good. Then you had to acknowledge that it's not so good. And now we brought it up to 10,000 a day. Okay, institutional quarantine was always good. So I think as long as the state governments acknowledge that this is a learning process, I think that's the way to go. And I think the other important issue here in doing all this, and this has got nothing to do with COVID, in all this in the lockdown, we mustn't and cannot surrender our civil liberties. I think that's a very, very important issue. And I think what else comes in this COVID? You can't only look at COVID and how it was handled. You need to look at how the guest workers, as I call them, or as you call them, the migrant workers were handled. Why were they given 4 hours notice? Why were MPs given 2 days notice and migrant workers given this notice? But I think that's all part of the past. We don't want to bring these questions up now. We can do the politics in December. But I think these are big challenges. But one thing is sure, that you cannot ever have a permanent lockdown where you have a lockdown and you throw away the keys. So you can't do it that way. But I think we have to find the right balance between keeping the economy going and keeping the numbers under control for COVID.
I have one question from you. As you clearly mentioned, few points which raises some questions there going further. One of it being the testing has increased. Now there is a confusion because some states are actually limiting the testing and saying if you're not symptomatic, we will not go for testing. So this, what is the approach that Bengal would like to take? Should we go for a higher testing numbers, or are we trying to again draw a line? Let's go for limited testing to not show the numbers, or maybe it is not required. What is the truth around this entire?
Bengal, I would urge anyone watching your program not to believe maybe what I say, but to go on and see the 5 pages, and I think it's got 14 different sections details, thorough and transparent details. And I think that's the first rule we should be following. Let's be very transparent. Let's be very thorough. For example, if you go on to the Bengal data sheet, you will see where the testing is happening, what is the recovery, how much male, how much female, what's the discharge rate, each district, So there's no use hiding anything. We need to be totally transparent. But since you mentioned that some states were hiding, I think, and testing asymptomatic or not, that's also not very true, because everyone was following ICMR guideline. At one time, ICMR said, don't test asymptomatic. Now, then they changed that. So all this is happening. I think this is not the time for passing. We need to be very focused. But I think the bigger issue here, beyond the testing and everything else, is that we have to be responsible. We can't be going into crowds. If we have to go and meet people, we have to wear a mask. We can't be loitering around the streets just for the sake of loitering around the streets. So it's easy to say on podcasts like this, but what about people who are hungry? What about people who don't know where the next meal is coming from? What about people who are not getting adequate benefits? So are they going to bother about COVID? Or in the Sunderbans where the entire house has been washed away? So these are very difficult times. And in all this, we've been saying this, and it's one thing which this government needs to do is to get money directly into the bank accounts of unorganized sector migrant workers. You've got to get 10,000 rupees in, and it's already been over 60 days. You've got to get it in quick, jaldi karo.
As you have said, they are our guests, the migrant workers. Now initiatives have been taken by more than the center, also individuals who have come forward and helped migrants go back home. In that process, do you think going back home was given more priority, as the government was clear in its 20 lakh crore package that we are not going to give direct benefit, we are creating a reform arrangement for the longer vision growth of the country? And that has not been taken much. I mean, there are confused views around that. Some people have taken it in stride and some have believed it's not been a good financial package to relieve at this point in time. How are you looking at the direct incentive to the migrant is still going to help them, because the fear and panic is between health and economy, and you want us to strike a balance?
2 points to answer your question. Firstly, you look at this package. It is more like a loan package. There is no package. Money has to go in directly because the situation is dire. Money has to go in directly. So anything else which you try and give like this is not going to help. Number two, about the migrants. See, the migrant workers were there on the 23rd, 24th of March. The railways, long distance trains and suburban together can carry about 22 million passengers a day. Long distance is 12 million passengers a day. Half of that assumed because of social distancing. So you could easily have carried 5-6 million passengers a day. My question is, why weren't those migrant workers moved 5-6 million a day? In the first 5-6 days, you'd have moved 30 million of them. Now you've kept them there for 50 days. 80 people have died. Who is responsible? So it hasn't been thought out. Two things haven't been thought out: the lockdown and the exit strategy. Both. And once there's no use pussyfooting and saying, at these difficult times, as a member of an opposition party, you can't criticize the government. We've given the government every opportunity. The chief ministers have cooperated. By the way, let me ask you, how many chief ministers were consulted before the lockdown was announced?
There were meetings held during the lockdown, not before the lockdown. So we had some conferences.
A single meeting, not a single consultation was held before the big lockdown was announced. Then what do? Then you ask people, okay, some of you light a diya, some of you go and bang the thala. Fine, do that. If anyone wanted to do that, you can do that. But what is the solution now? We've cooperated. Now we have to see the results. And the results are not very encouraging.
So as a state, how are you planning the future for the people who have come back, maybe the migrant workers? Because when do we see them going back to work? Their earning, their livelihood has to resume. So as a state, what coordination are you seeking with the center that let's now work it up for the betterment of the lives of people who are here? Jobless, job cuts?
Unfortunately, there was no coordination when the trains were sent back, because you need to know that when the trains come back, there is a 4-stage process. Those migrant workers, our guest workers who come back, first they have to be screened. Number 2, quarantine center, as a home quarantine. Number 3, quarantine center. Number 4, if they are symptomatic, they got to go to hospital. Who is the implementing authority? The state government. Now, these migrant workers, normally in the monsoon season, they would any case not go back to work. So my sense is that if you look at the monsoon season now, followed by Chhat, so especially from Bihar, so I don't think anyone's in a hurry to get back before September. I hope by then the positive which happens, the wage goes up. And by the way, these migrant workers also, they don't go through agents. 80% of migrant workers, experts say, don't go through agents. They go through the network. So I don't know how that will pan out. But one good thing, which my state has done, and I'm glad this government, even though it's better late than never, is now looking seriously at the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, Manrega.
Yes.
So that is also where we are suggesting that 206 rupees or 220 rupees as the minimum wage won't do. That needs to get up to 350 rupees. Then you need to give people enough work to do to keep them engaged. For example, if you're having an irrigation project in your state and these guest workers have come back, you need to involve them in that irrigation project. I also request the government to pay in 15 days so they can get their money on time. Next request to the government, and not even a request, not even an appeal, it's almost like urging the government to say, listen, when you say 100 days work, no, most people are ending up with 45, 50 days work. You got to take it up to 100 plus days work. So these are the big issues.
I want to ask you another, we want to show our gratefulness to the way the state has handled the cyclone. I'm in the state, I'm living in Kolkata. I had seen the way we all had seen the cyclone come around that evening, and I'm quite safe in my house. But I cannot, the very next day, in 1 week, we did not have network connection and all was resumed as fast as it could be. What took into getting that together? People are writing on social media about Sunderbans. We want to know what really took to the state to get all of that together in the second, to say the crisis that hit us more strongly. And did you really find support around inside and outside your state for
I'm happy I choose to come on platforms like these. You're not very big in terms of millions of viewers, but your mindset is positive. And there's so much of positive to take it as to the way this cyclone was handled. I think the biggest plus point of everything the state did was to manage to evacuate 5 lakh people. It would have been a disaster. So you have to communicate that this is something serious coming your way. So I think the evacuation was done very, very well. The devastation has taken place on 16 districts. And you're quite right when you say, because I'm just doing a comparison. I'm going to put that out in the next few days. If you compare, say, Katrina, or you compare Sandy in New York or Katrina, then you will know how quickly we got things back. And it's not only getting things back, 6,250 crores was put into people's bank accounts. So 5 lakh households out of the 10 lakh households destroyed, 20,000 rupees already bank account mein pahunch gaya. This is very, very, crucial. Then you must have seen about planting of the 5 crore saplings and another in the Sunderbans. So these are the electricity. Of course, first 2-3 days it couldn't be normal. It took 2-3 days or maybe 4 days, maybe 5 days in some cases to restore it. But I think one of the most interesting challenges in all this negativity, there's also positivity. Scientists in Bengal and researchers, one of the major areas for destruction is where the mud got saline. So the saline water got in to that mud. And there were breakthroughs in agriculture to find ways to use the mud with the saline in it. The extent of the damage: 10.5 lakh hectares of farmland, 58,000 hectares of fishery damaged, 4,000 kilometers of roads damaged. Plus we lost lives of about 100 people, including a fire brigade personnel. And Sunderban, it's a United Nations heritage site. There was devastation there. But I think the people of Bengal, young people like you who live in Bengal, have the tenacity, have the resilience. And yes, different people beyond the government have tried to come together to support in any way possible. So that's also a very positive development, but it's a massive, almighty challenge. The captain is, of course, the only lady chief minister in the country,
Yes.
plus a very good team, West Bengal Police, Kolkata Police, the health department, everyone worked together, the NGOs.
Derek, I was reading a beautiful article just in the morning when I woke up and landed up on your article of the 10 points that are quite, that your learnings are from this whole COVID scene. I mean, it's not just linked to how people are being dealing with it, but personally, how we have changed our life, or the new normal word has been trending for a while now. What are the important 2 or 3 of the 10 lists that you have put out in our public space for us to know that you think will change your life for sure?
Actually, I put out 20 because I wrote 2 articles. So when I thought of another 10, but there are so many which are, I think there are so many which are important. Just, I think, obviously the focus on healthcare infrastructure,
Yes.
that is going to be big. I think the biggest one will be on education and how we handle that. Telemedicine will change. How we do our charity will change. How we worship will change.
True.
Maybe I would never have done this podcast interview if you had asked me in normal times. But here we are trying to reach out to more and more people in
Yes,
different
we are
ways.
trying our best.
So I think so many of it will change. But I want the positive part is even during the Great Depression of the 1920s in the US, from those depressing times or during the Great Depression, so many other positives came out. Do you know the helicopter was designed and implemented at that time? The ballpoint pen was a result just post the depression. Nylon, there was no nylon before that, but someone came up with the concept of nylon after the depression. So who knows, after 2020 COVID, we may have some great discoveries coming up in 2021. And who
That's
knows,
right.
politicians or people in public life may say, hey, listen, we don't only have to go to television channels in the evening. We can do podcasts. I did a Zoom interaction last week. It was fabulous with 1,000 students. And then suddenly this boy says, I'm from Kashmir. Somebody else says they're from Patna. Yeah, it was fabulous. It was organized by
How
University of Bangalore.
nice.
Yeah, so I'm doing Instagram every evening, not every evening, maybe once or twice a week at 8 o'clock. So I think it's a learning process for all of us. And I think the way we worship is also going to change. It's going to become.
Are we going to worship less without
No,
idea?
I worship more. I worship more during the lockdown because I think you can actually do your puja or do or pray without going to the masjid or without going to the mandir or without going to a church or without going to a gurdwara. It's coming online now, so you can actually and religion is supposed to be a very private ritual, a private experience. So it's actually good. The way we do our charity will change. The way we transport, the way we move around will change. Who knows? Next time you get onto a plane, you look to your left, and the lady there may be traveling in a PPE suit.
So we have someone very keen to talk to you, waiting for years to be here with you on screen. We have Napur Parekh. She has shared this space with you when she was as young as in class 9, and in her school days she was lucky to have won that contest which you used to host in all our school, and we would keep waiting for you all through when will Derek sir come in and have that Bonvita quiz contest with us. And she's there with us, Napur here. You're there with, she's a dentist and a prolific writer. She has her views across her global issues around. And here, Napur, we have Derek sir with you. I think you're living your moment again after years.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. O'Brien. My name is Dr. Napur Parekh, and I'm a dental surgeon, a mother to a 1.5-year-old boy, and I'm trying to get my work published one day soon. So we last met 17 years ago at the Eden Gardens when we were shooting for BQC, and you gave me my first paycheck that day. So you kickstarted my career that day. So I have like special thanks. And yeah, so this is
Which school?
I'm from Mahadevi Birla.
Okay, so we were shooting at Eden Gardens, and you won a prize and you got money.
I got, that was my first paycheck that day. I won the semi-final round that day. So I remember going back home and telling my dad that, I'm going to work with Derek OBrien one day for sure. And this isn't work, but this is a big deal.
Yeah, good. Very good. And you're based where, Napur?
I'm based in Calcutta. So just currently quarantining at home, like all of us. So, Mr. O'Brien, can I ask you a very personal question? I have always admired people who've made like career transitions, and I've always been a huge nerd, and I've always, really respected the way you've carried yourself professionally. I was reading about you, and I saw that you started off as a journalist in the 70s, I believe, and
No,
then you
I was in school in the 70s. Don't make me so old.
you started off as a journalist, though.
80s, 80s. Yeah.
And then
I'm
you
old,
moved
but
on.
not that old.
Okay. So then you were in the ad agency world, and then you started BQC, living up to your father's rich legacy as a quizmaster. So, and now you're a parliamentarian, and the way you conduct yourself is very admirable. So, making career switches and doing them so successfully and smoothly is must have taken a lot of conviction from your end, and just the way you've carried yourself and had that self-confidence. What drove you, and what sort of kept you going and kept you inspired like that?
Well, thank you for those kind words. I don't know how much I deserve, but you've used a very important word, I think, in your question, which perhaps answers it. And it's the C word, which is conviction.
Okay.
Now if you say the C word, it means too many bad things. C is cyclone, C is COVID. Yeah. So for me, it was the C, which is the conviction. And I haven't actually answered this question ever like this before, but since you've kind of made me think about it. And the other one is, if you look at the time I spent, 1 year only in journalism, then
Okay.
9 years in advertising, including a little bit overlap with this quizzing, and then about 12, 13 years in quizzing, and now 16, 17 years in politics.
Mm-hmm.
So conviction is one, and I'll talk to you about that if you want to know something, because I really get a chance to speak on subjects like this. And the other one is, you said career choices, which is C. But sometimes I wonder, was it really a career choice? Because there was a link between all these careers, if you want to call them that. And that is also a C word. And that is communication.
Yes, that's true.
And that is another C, content.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a journalist, I need to, for that 1 year, I needed to create content and communicate it. When I was in advertising, I was creating content to communicate for another C, my clients. Okay, this is a very cool answer I thought of this morning, actually. So clients. That was in advertising for 8-9 years with Ogilvy. Those were my real learning years in the advertising agency. And then in politics, because I have a boss who is a lady who perhaps has been very generous in giving me an opportunity to communicate. And even in Parliament, I'm communicating content. I'm not communicating quiz questions, but at the same time, in whatever you do, doctor, in whatever I have done, the base of that has been content. So if you don't have good content, then you can't make that happen. And the other one is conviction. When I told everybody that, my family actually, my parents, that I was going to quit my job in Ogilvy and do what? Quizzing? Ye kya hota hai? No, you can't possibly, you can do it as a hobby and a weekend. So I did that. But in 2004, when I told my dad and mom, both have passed on, but when I told them at the dining table that I was going to leave this quizzing thing and do politics, they doubly freaked out. But I said, that's the chance. So plus I think you also need a little bit of luck.
True.
So it's a long answer to the question, but I thought it was an interesting question. You can't do a career switch. From a dentist now, you can't suddenly decide you're going to become an anesthetist. But I know a lot of doctors and all who are very good writers. By the way, my wife's a doc. Where is the doc?
Wow.
Yes, I know that. In Brooklyn, isn't she?
Yeah. She's an internist, but now she's back. Now she's back in Delhi. Yeah, very nice. It was nice.
Nupur, before you take your second question, with that C chain that you created, what is that C challenging part of the whole journey that you had? What was the most challenging aspect of all the phases you had as a journalist, or as she asked about?
The most difficult part is you have your own conviction to stand by your conviction. Doesn't matter what the others say. So the conviction has to be there, I mean, I'm not in Trinamool Congress for the last 16, 17 years because I have a job to do and I have the parliamentary party leader. The party has given me the responsibility there in Rajya Sabha to lead the party. All that is fine, or be the chief national spokesperson. No. The conviction that what we are doing in Bengal is good. The conviction to know that we are not perfect. The conviction to know that we need to be humble. The conviction to know that we may get it wrong sometimes and learn from that what is wrong. So that's the conviction,
Mr. O'Brien, I wanted to ask you another question about mental health. So I have always, I know a lot of people personally in my family as well who've battled mental health issues. And our country itself is extremely closed and very narrow-minded and old school about how we tackle these things. I was just wondering, and particularly in this terrible lockdown scenario where there's no sort of hope in sight, how do you deal with cabin fever, so to speak? And, what do you do as a leader? Is there anything you'd like to say to inspire people to just, maintain their sanity?
I'll tell you what we did. Firstly, I'm not an expert, so I don't want to give any expert comments on a subject I don't know. So the first thing is, those who are not the experts should zip up, but we can share our experiences. In fact, yes. Coincidentally, Doctor, about 6 weeks ago, I sometimes do this Instagram at 8 o'clock every evening, not every evening, once or twice a week. And I had a mental health professional, Dr. Ram, from Calcutta. And it was fabulous the way he was, speaking to us. And the reason I'm reaching for my phone now is because I think more public figures should speak up on this issue, because it's very easy. So I've got a very good example for you. And this is not from even my political party. He's from another political party, but doesn't matter, because he shared this last night and then I spoke with him and called him up. This is what he said. Okay, listen to this. I think this is, inspirational. He said, my own experience with suicidal thoughts, first as a teenager, even as a member of parliament in 2006 to 2008, taught me to live with the blues, sharing 5 effective coping tools. This is Milind Deora. He's not from Trinamool. He's from Congress. But he shared this. And, a public figure like this coming out and sharing. So rather than me giving you my own gyan, let me tell you, because Milind said he had this 2006 was his worst year. He was an MP. This is what he says. 5 points. 1, reach out to your family, your friends, your colleagues, and even acquaintances. You are loved more than you know. 2, overcome the stigma of mental health and seeking counseling. Depression transcends age, gender, economic strata, or success, so seek help. 3, we are in constant struggle with our inner demons. Don't give in to them. 4, says Milind, life is beautiful. Don't get caught up in the rat race. Nice. And I like this. Choose music, choose food, choose travel, reading, your work, your loved ones. Choose life. And 5, love yourself for who you are. Wow. I really like what Milind wrote. And I also like what Deepika Padukone put on her tweet, saying that nobody commits suicide, you die from suicide. So I think the more conversations we have like this, in fact, I was so tempted to actually have Milind on the show, on my Instagram show, and doesn't matter what political party he belongs to, I belong to, but we can, actually discuss it. And I think the young people like you guys, all in your 20s and millennials in their 30s, I think you all have a much better sense. My generation would say, no, oh, pagal, we can't discuss that. But I think the way you guys are discussing it, I think it's one of the big issues. And I'm really happy that West Bengal government within 1 week of the lockdown put out those numbers. And when the lady who runs that she was telling me we're getting 20 calls a day, I said, wow. There are other more important, you may say those are other more important issues, like ration was reached to 8 crore people. Now that's important because that's a question of you go hungry or you die. But these issues, and these are the issues which we are discussing today, you can well imagine how many people are not discussing these issues? You know, you're on Instagram, you're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you're on Snapchat, so these are issues being discussed. But I think it's a big issue, and I think I'm glad that you brought it up, and I'm feeling so wonderful this morning interacting with two young ladies who are professional. Another sweet thing I must tell you about, you know, if you don't mind. A lot of young people, especially young journalists, and maybe they can learn from you. First time they meet you, you know, hello Derek, you know, we want to ask you a question. I'm noticed both of you all said Mr. O'Brien. That is nice. That is a very nice kind of you know, way to introduce. You know, otherwise, you know, oh, acha Derek, ye bolo, wo bolo, you know, so it's nice. It's good. It's very nice, and good luck to all you guys doing. And, you know, I feel happier. I never knew this because my colleagues didn't tell me that the interaction this morning is going to be from young people from home. I'm missing home because I've been in Delhi from March the 2nd.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I'm missing home. I'm not planning to go back because I'm paranoid. You know, I've got to take me.
I think it is important that as a state in Bengal, not just us who are privileged, but even migrants and all, they don't even know what kind of mental status they go into because the future is so oblivion or bleak for everybody. So it's important that people at that state administration also take the charge and help everyone come out.
But I want to tell everybody who's watching this program, you guys think that everybody leaves Calcutta and they go here and they go there. Look at these two ladies here. They are well informed. They're completely tuned in. They've conducted a great interview. This is one of the best interviews I've done in a long, long time. Thank you both very, very much. And my warmest regards to every member of your family.
Thank you so much. Please take care, and we would certainly want to be in touch with you again. Mr. O'Brien, last message for people I would want, because we sign off with this message that you have for people today. There's a lot being spoken on media about the center-state fight and accusations and things spilling over. I know we don't want to go there and create negativity, but your message to the mankind today who are standing strong with you, and we all are together in the same boat today, what would it be for everybody there?
I think the one message or the thought which I want to share is that this is a great time to do something for the have-nots. We need to be blessed. We are blessed with what we have. Now is the time, in whichever way possible, to share, in whichever way you can, you know.
Thank you so much. I leave the sign off with this thought of Mr. O'Brien and Napur. Thank you so much for joining and giving us your time. It's a privilege to have both of you together in this morning. Thank you. Okay.
Brought to you by India Podcasts in association with ICI Healthcare.